A lot of people will recall that romaine lettuce was recalled from the U.S. market a few years back. All the romaine lettuce in the whole country was recalled, and so for a whole season you couldn't get romaine lettuce.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Jim White, president and co-founder of NSSA for Food, a company leading the way in food traceability and serialization solutions. Jim brings years of experience in regulatory tech and product innovation. We're going to be diving into how his team is helping food and beverage companies navigate compliance, earn customer trust, and grow with new regulations on the horizon. Jim, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Meir. Great to be here.
Perfect. Let's get started. So, what's the story behind NSSA for Food, and what inspired your mission to improve food traceability and compliance?
So the impetus for it was actually a rule that the FDA had written as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act. When Congress passed that act in 2008, they told the FDA, "We want you to create a traceability rule." So in 2022, they created the final rule for the food traceability rule, which was Section 204 of the Food Safety Modernization Act. So a lot of people refer to this as FSMA 204. And so what that rule does is it requires that everybody who handles food on the food traceability list, and these are foods that are basically have some high risk of pathogen contamination because of, for example, they're eaten raw. So like a lot of vegetables are on that list. But also things like fresh and frozen seafood, certain fruits, especially if you cut them, eggs, nut butters, et cetera, et cetera. These are foods that have traditionally kind of a risk profile that's pretty high. That's on the food traceability list. They said, we want to be able to trace that back from wherever people ate it or bought it. So I go to a restaurant or a grocery store and I buy the food. The FDA wants to be able to trace that all the way back to the source of it and get there really super fast so they can discover where, what foods actually caused it so that they could reduce the recall. So for example, a lot of people will recall that romaine lettuce was recalled from the U.S. market a few years back. All the romaine lettuce in the whole country was recalled, and so for a whole season you couldn't get romaine lettuce. And the reason that happened is that people kept getting sick, and they couldn't find their way back to the source of it. 3 years later, the FDA was able to get to the bottom of it. It turned out it was one farm, one really big farm in some of the western states. That's kind of an example of kind of why this is so important. So not only does it affect all the farmers who had romaine lettuce, they had to throw away the whole crop and destroy it, but then everybody who had it inside their warehouses. So if you're in the cold chain, you have romaine lettuce. If you're a grocery store, you have to take it off your shelves. But also if you're a restaurant, you're a restaurant and you have a Caesar salad, you have to take that item off your menu because you can't get romaine lettuce. And you have to go back and figure out, okay, what am I going to replace that with? It has massive impact. So the food traceability rule is a rule that basically requires people in the supply chain, enterprises in the supply chain, to do something they haven't been required to do at a level they haven't been required. And so we saw a great opportunity because we had a serialization platform that we have deployed in other markets like pharmaceutical and the EU tobacco directive, where we saw it really fit what we could do. And so we actually entered into the FDA's low-cost food traceability challenge, and there was about 100 companies that entered into that in, I want to say 2021, and we were one of the 10 companies that were selected as the winners there. And so that gave us confidence that says, hey, this is a market we can go after. So that's what caused us to jump into the food traceability space.
And that's fascinating to me because I never knew anything about that. But I'm curious, without getting too much in the weeds and too technical, how do you actually enable this process of traceability with your solutions?
Well, so the rule is actually really eloquent. And basically the FDA defined the rule that said, hey, there's these critical tracking events, harvest, pack, cool, ship, receive, first land receive for seafood. There's 7 of them. And what we want when you do that is send us some key data elements with that. So you got to record it and then just share that information with everybody up as you pass the product along with it is this digital twin about the food that you send all the way up, so that at the end of the supply chain with the retail, whether it's a restaurant, food service, or a grocery store, they know, okay, for this month I had all these products, and I can give the FDA this data, and then they can find their way back to everybody else who's holding that data in their own records. So from a practical standpoint, what it does is it requires a lot of businesses to do a really simple, basic record keeping task. And that's what our software does.
It's fascinating to me. You mentioned that there are not many companies who do this, but I am curious, like, how do you stand out from other compliance tech platforms, especially like in terms of ease of use and then cost for your customers?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. One is the platform that we're using has been deployed in, super high volume digital product passport stuff. So the platform itself is completely vetted. It does billions of transactions as on it. We have taken it and have made it super simple. It's very, very cost effective because it's a mature, tested product that's scalable. So, and then we have focused on a segment of the market that a lot of our competitors don't focus on because it's a fragmented market. So, for example, we focus on what we call the primary source. Right now, we're focused on the primary source. So, the primary source is the place where the food enters the system. So that's usually the farmer or the fisherman. And that's important because the rule really is about creating a chain of customers. You can't actually solve it at the end or in the middle. You have to start at the beginning. So you have to create the digital twin for the food when it's harvested or when it's first landed. And then you share that data with the next person in line, who may be a packer or they may be some kind of a processor, who then sends it to a distributor or a warehouse kind of organization, who then sends it to the retailer. And so if you don't have the original information, there's nothing to share with your trading partners. And so we focused on the primary source. That's what we're doing right now. And because of that, we built our whole system to be really usable for that part of the marketplace, which tends to be smaller, less sophisticated with regard to IT infrastructure. So, for example, it's very common for our solution to go in and be, other than QuickBooks, will be the first digital platform they have in their business, because they do a lot of record keeping. But in general, these guys keep a lot of paper records because they had to do that for gap certifications and that sort of thing. And so our system is really designed to be very easy to use for those small fragmented businesses that kind of start the food. They're what we call the non-contingent creators of the traceability.
Yeah, that's really interesting, your strategy.
Mhm.
I'm curious hearing that, these customers, a lot of the times they're not very adapted to the whole entire digital infrastructure that we have nowadays. How are you getting in front of them beyond just word of mouth?
So that's actually something we're working on right now, which is, kind of standing up the sales machines. Where we're at, we have a set of customers that are on our system, and they're paying, and so so we have that experience. We've had them on there for some of them for over a year, and so we have a good idea of who they are, what they care about, that sort of thing. And so right now we're just beginning to launch kind of what we call our sales machine outreach and say, hey, we think we can help you solve these problems. One of the problems, of course, is being compliant with FSMA 204. The reality of it is, though, that the FDA has recently pushed back the compliance deadline by 30 months. And so a lot of small businesses, they don't think about things that are 30 months away, right? It's not within their time horizon. But fortunately, one of the things we've learned from working with these customers is that there's a lot of really near-term operational benefits of digitalizing their traceability practices, and simple things like, hey, it'll help you in your audit with your certification body, whether that's GAP or Primus or, um, you know, other certifications. It also helps you with, for example, they all have to print supply chain ready labels. All right. Once you do the tasks that this tool requires, these things kind of flow out of our system like water, and our customers will talk about things like, one-click printing, which is something for them. It was like many steps, complicated, really tedious kind of exercise for them, and they really appreciate that. And then the third thing they get is they get a digital inventory. So I put that in the context of how do you outreach is, to be able to tell people that the operational benefits of using a system like this now, right? So that people have a reason to engage now with our solution. And this is actually really important to enabling the whole FSMA 204 ecosystem, because until all these millions of farmers and fishermen, and by the way, people, you know, it anybody who imports these foods into the United States has to do it. So this is not just for US companies. So for example, 80% of our seafood in the United States is coming from overseas. 60% of our produce is coming from, Mexico, South America when it's off season, or from, other places that have unique products. So it affects companies all over the world, and a lot of them don't know they have this duty yet, right? Because that news hasn't really trickled down to them. And so so to be able to talk about, let's get started on solving some near-term operational issues for you that will make your business work better today, regardless of your compliance duty, is an opportunity to bring on thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers in the next year or two, before the compliance requirements in place. And that's going to be very important to all the people upstream, the Walmarts and the Krogers, who are saying, hey, I want this data in my system. Well, unless somebody creates it at the primary source, there's no data to give them.
It sounds amazing that you guys are getting ahead of it and already,
Right.
it sounds like you've figured out a perfect solution to really make this easy for your customers. You mentioned that you guys are, trying to develop a sales machine. Are you currently using any AI or automation in regards to your marketing or your sales systems?
So we're using a platform that has some AI stuff as part of it, and we're just really standing that up right now. A place where AI is going to be really important is on the onboarding. So there's a master data setup that's required, and we can stand up a farmer in a couple of hours. But right now, there's a lot of what I would call kind of low rent consulting that we have to do to help them appreciate, like, oh, this is how you put a product into the system, and then you have a conversation about what's the right unit of measure. And then a lot of times there's a requirement to have, like, as a unique product ID. If you go up the supply chain, most people use GS1, like G-TINs, as their unique product ID. When you go towards this segment of the market, in general, that's not something they've been doing. And so they need a solution to create these unique product IDs. And so we're a GS1 reseller, but we also are you know, uh, 15459 number issuer. So we can give them that sort of thing. So, but we're using AI. We're putting in place some AI tools to facilitate that onboarding and that conversation with the customers, to make that part require less human intervention, so we can keep the cost really low for the customers.
I like that. Yeah, because I think, it sounds like you're still fine-tuning your product and making it um it's fit specifically with your ideal clients who can afford a very high price point. So just making it more
Exactly.
efficient, I think will be perfect for them. Has that been the toughest part for you guys about turning leads into paying clients, or has it been another part of your funnel?
No, no, I would say one is, so the first issue is talking to them about the benefits that they would get now, right? So the original compliance deadline was January 20th of 2026, which is right around the corner, right? In March, the FDA announced that they were going to delay it by 30 months. So up until March, we were really leaning into that, and that was a forcing factor. Oh, I have to do this within a year. So that was good enough. And now, since we have this push out of time, we have to talk to them about the things that they should be, why they should be doing it now, right? And I think we have found, a message that works, and now we just have to figure out how to get that in front of a lot of people and test it, make sure it resonates. They hear it and they say, "You're right. That sounds like an intriguing thing to do right now." And the problem with small businesses always is they can do one or two things at a time. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have a staff. They can't assign a tiger team to things and stuff like that. So is this something I want to do now? So we have to make it something that's relevant for them, for their business right now. And I think we found the recipe for that.
Yeah, it sounds to me that it's really about communicating those benefits to help them
Absolutely.
understand why this is important, but then also making it easy, like we were discussing with different tools to make it something that they can apply quickly because they have limited amount of time and they are focused on a lot, just handling their business all on their own. I like to ask this question a lot, and it really gets some interesting answers. So, like, if you had a magic wand, what part of your business would you immediately fix to be able to get that growth that you're aiming for?
The, it would be finding a way to get that message in front of this particular audience, right? So, if you think about this harvester community, they actually tend to be older, right? Like the farmers in the United States are aged, right? And the same is true for the fishermen. And I'm real focused right now on the domestic side of this right now. So finding a way to reach that audience at scale with a message, and I'm sure you know this, they got to hear this thing probably 25 or 30 times before it kind of registers and they say, let me start to take some action on that. And so that they're coming to us instead of us just kind of meeting with them and then trying to explain it to them, and in that kind of hand to hand, you know, sales engagement, which right now is fine because we'll stand up customers at a certain kind of a pace. But at some point in time, we need to start to be bringing on hundreds and hundreds of people a week. And in order to do that, we need them to be ready to buy. So we got to condition them to be ready to buy.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that's key is being able to get in front of your right audience and then also being able to educate them enough as to the benefits. Again, that comes back to the messaging so that when you actually do, make that proposition, they are ready to buy and they come in and they can get onboarded quickly and that will eventually be really productive for you guys.
Right.
Looking at the next year, what would be the part that you're most excited about for your company's growth?
Whenever you're a startup, there's what would I do if 1,000 people showed up in 1 week? There's a supply side problem too, right? I mean, like, so figuring out a really controllable way that says, okay, I can create demand in this segment at the pace that I can actually deliver while I scale my own business so that I can figure out how to address that kind of demand, requirement, and balancing those two things. And so finding that equation is, I do these things which cost this much money. I get these results at such and such a pace. And then from there you can start to say, hey, what do I have to do, from a supply side in our own business to be able to double it, triple it, quadruple it, so that you get to the point. Eventually, we have to get to the point because that between us and all our competitors, we have to figure out how to onboard about 4 million enterprises. So people don't realize how many people are touching food on the food traceability list. So at first it starts with harvesters, and there's a lot of those millions. There's a million or two of harvesters all over the world. But then there's all the guys in the middle, who touch it, warehouses, co-packers, repackers, et cetera, producer, product manufacturers. And then on the far right-hand side at the end, there's a lot of small guys. If you have a pizza parlor, right, you have a requirement for FSMA 204, right, to receive that product and have that data, that spreadsheet in case the FDA calls. If you have a convenience store, I mean, just think about walk through a gas station and look at what's in the refrigerator. There are foods on the food traceability list. There's probably hard-boiled eggs in there. They're on the food traceability list. There might be some like little salad kits that you're selling for people who come in to eat lunch. That's on the food traceability list. There may be some products that have sliced fruits. Those are foods on the food traceability list. Probably, maybe not there's seafood in a gas station, but there could be, I guess. But point is that there's very few places, and there's, lots of these. There's a million restaurants in the United States, right? And there's, tens, hundreds of thousands of gas stations with convenience refrigerators that they all have a compliance duty. So, eventually our industry has to solve the problem of how do I bring these guys on board pretty effortlessly in a matter of a day or two, and at pretty low cost for it to work.
It's fascinating, and maybe it's also good news for you guys that you have a bit more time to figure out how to onboard everyone before these regulations come into practice.
Yeah.
This has been really eye-opening for me because I didn't know that this change was happening. But for anyone who's listening who does want to learn more and reach out and look into your compliance solutions, where's the best place to find you online?
To find me would be LinkedIn, and my handle's like Jim White RDU. And then of course, our website is Enseso, ENSESO, the number 4 food.com. And we're all listed there. And you can see a little bit about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and that sort of thing. So, and we have a contact form on there. You fill that out and we'll get back with you.